Dean Rusk disagrees with you, and he was the Secretary of State at the time, but that's fine.
The communist nations have exploited the turmoil of a time of transition in an effort to extend communist control into other areas of the world.
Thoughts on Dean Rusk and America's involvement in Vietnam? I know next to nothing about that.
Exactly.
Hamas admits it lied to the world about how many Gazan children and civilians died in Gaza. Since the horrific attacks of October 7, 2023, Hamas and its sympathizers at the United Nations and college campuses have lied to the world. They have denied the truth that Hamas raped its prisoners, invented atrocities by Israeli forces, and denied Israel has the very right to exist. They also made up how many Gazans died. We know this because Hamas admits it. The murderous terror organization's Ministry of Health has quietly reduced the number of civilian deaths that it has claimed were inflicted by Israeli forces. In its March 2025 fatality list, 3,400 victims simply vanish. Previously listed as people who perished last August and October, it turns out Hamas invented them. That includes 1,080 children Hamas claimed were killed by Israel that never were. Of course, the media and protesters parroted these numbers without question. Will they show any remorse now? Will they start treating official proclamations from the Hamas-controlled agencies as what they are? Propaganda and provocations. Please. The usual idiots at Columbia University will keep falsely shouting genocide as they ignore the hostages held and tortured by Hamas. The outrage goes beyond the number Hamas said were killed. Andrew Fox, author of a report for the Henry Jackson Society on Gazan Casualties, tells The Telegraph. The demographics are the most important thing in all this. We've heard the claims that about 70% of the deaths were women and children, and these lists, especially the most recent, show that's complete nonsense, he said. The truth, about 72% of those killed are men, ages 13 to 55. In other words, likely members of Hamas. The Henry Jackson Society report goes into detail about how the Ministry of Health, a group controlled by Hamas, fucked and fudged with the numbers. Serious errors have been discovered on the ministry's list of fatalities, the report states. These errors include a 22-year-old registered as a 4-year-old, a 31-year-old registered as a 1-year-old, and several men with male first names registered as female, artificially increasing the numbers of women and children reported killed. The list also includes people who died before the war even began, and people who died from attacks by Hamas rather than the Israel Defense Forces. They likely include around 5,000 natural deaths per year, including cancer patients who were listed by the Ministry of Hospital Treatment after they had already appeared on fatality lists. Israel has gone out of its way to minimize civilian deaths, giving warnings for areas to be evacuated ahead of military actions. Again and again, the Hamas narrative has been debunked. Remember the Al-Ahil Arab hospital explosion in the early days of Israel's counterattack? Hamas claimed 500 were killed by an Israeli bomb, and the world and the media rushed in with outrage. Investigations later found, of course, the death toll was much lower, and they were killed by a terrorist missile that had malfunctioned. So why is Hamas suddenly admitting that it overstated the death toll in Gaza? One theory is that the terror group whose members murdered, raped, and kidnapped more than 1,200 Jews on October 7, 2023, is scrambling to maintain credibility at a time when Palestinians are rising up in protest against Hamas's chokehold on the territory. Thousands turned out last week in places such as Gaza City to demonstrate, issuing chants such as, "Out, out, out, Hamas, get out." It seems you can add Palestinians themselves to the many people sick and tired of Hamas. The only people who aren't sick of Hamas? The protesters who hide their identities behind keffiyeh scarves, chain themselves to fences, and march through the streets harassing Jews. They are immune to the truth. Are you one of the immune?
أنت مولانا فقل له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.